We want to welcome you to today's service. We were hoping that this would be in person, but because of unforeseen circumstances, we're not in person. But we have a really awesome setup for you guys today because I'm really excited to dive into today's message. Today's message is one that I was inspired by. One of my theology professors at Southern, and it's a message that's always stood with me. It's the most important thing to spirituality. So we're going to dive into today's message, and we actually don't have a song service today. So because we don't have a song service, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter online church service, and all our people were ready to give you an amazing worship experience in person, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we couldn't necessarily get together, and we wanted to make sure we keep you guys safe. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just show you guys how you guys could dive into the online giving to make sure that we continue to provide for you and the community around us. This is our website, vineyardsda.org, and we really appreciate your support and everything you do to minister to the community around us. So we're gonna dive into now our sermon illustration, and I hope that you enjoy this next video. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into today's message. We're gonna start with give you a little preview of the message today. All right. So thanks and giving is our theme. Thanks and giving, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna pray, and then we'll dive into today's message. So if you don't mind bowing your heads with me, so that we could begin with prayer. Father in heaven, Lord, thank you so much for your love and grace. I just ask you to be with us. Help us be able to just connect to your word and help us be able to understand this warning that you give us on one of the most dangerous things when it comes to spirituality. Pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. In the Second World War, one of the most important soldiers were the paratroopers, when they would jump out of the planes and come in and attack the enemies from behind enemy lines. And as they would jump out, they were very vulnerable when they were coming in because the enemy would see them in their parachutes and they would shoot them down. So they wanted to find a way in order to be able to get behind enemy lines without getting shot down by the enemy. One of the methods that was improvised is to put parachutes on dummies and to shoot them out. And as they were coming down, they would be a distraction. This distraction would help the paratroopers get behind enemy lines and be able to get to the platoons that they needed to. Now, in this illustration, what we have is these rubber dummies that served as the focus of the attention of the enemy's bullets. And the question that I have is there something that we deem important in spirituality that in reality is not that important, and we're missing out on what's truly important? I think that could be said for today's message. The first time I looked into it, the first time I saw what this message entailed, I realized the deep importance of this discussion on today's message. What we're going to do is we're going to dive into the first question. It says here, what is the greatest obstacle to our spirituality? Greatest obstacle to spirituality. I'm wondering if you could write down in the comments what you think is the greatest obstacle to our spirituality, because I think that there's a lot of answers that could be given. I think that one typically that would be given is the television. People will say, oh, well, today entertainment is just so bad. But is it really the most dangerous thing in our community? I don't know. Some people would say, well, it has to do with the tear down of society and social norms, and people would say it's abortion, racism, and people would say things like broken marriages. Now, I think all those are very important things to discuss and to talk about the validity or the ethical circumstance and scriptural support of those conversations. But is that really the most important spiritual thing in our lives? What is the greatest obstacle according to the Bible? Well, we're going to dive into our first passage here. It's Romans 1, verses 18 and 19, and we're reading from the ESV, and it says here, "For the wrath of God is revealed in heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. By their unrighteousness they suppress the truth, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them." So I want to step back and just unwrap this a little bit. In this passage, we have the background, the setup to talk about the most important and dangerous aspect to our spirituality. And in here, we have a couple things going on. We have God's wrath coming down on ungodliness and unrighteousness. And this type of unrighteousness is not a very typical unrighteousness. This is the type of unrighteousness that just denies the validity of truth itself. And I think that that's an important conversation to have. This isn't just messing up and doing something bad. This is actually someone that suppresses the very understanding and the very possibility of truth to even exist. This is someone that twists lies into truth and denies there even being any truth and establishes their own truth. This is someone that suppresses the truth. And one of the things that this is talking about is that this connection with ungodliness and righteousness, its natural inclination is going to be to suppress the truth. The natural inclination is going to be to deny that truth exists, that there's a validity to truth, and then they're going to portray their own truth. Now, there's a specific word here to describe the way that this works. It's saying here that they suppress the truth. Well, what does this mean? Let's look into this word suppression. As we look into this word suppression, we'll see a little bit more. In this word suppression, it is used 17 times within the Greek New Testament. And the Greek word is katecho. Katecho is used 17 times. And in its transitive form, in the form that we find it here in Romans, it literally means to hold down, to detain, or to retain the truth. I want you to look back at this verse. It's saying unrighteousness is holding down, detaining the truth. Essentially, detaining the truth from being able to come out and expose everything for what it is. What's one of the reasons that we would want to detain the truth? What's one of the reasons that because truth is one of those things that whenever it's exposed, it comes in one of the most uncomfortable forms. It reveals us for who we really are, and it reveals the community around us for what it really is. I think that the most difficult thing about truth is the fact that truth laid bare always reveals where we need to grow. So there are two types of people that respond to this. They're first the individuals that I would call the rubber band individuals. In the book, thank you for the feedback. It's really fascinating. It says that there's individuals that will never take any sort of criticism. Every time you mention anything up, to lift them up to say something about the individual's work or their ethic or just their personality in general, they'll always deny that it has anything to do with them. Now, it could be false. The information that could be given could not be true. But one of the things that's mentioned in the book, Thanks for the Feedback, it actually says that even if there was a 10% chance that there's a little bit of aspect of truth to what they're saying, then you denying it, you're just denying 10% of growth in your own experience. Think about that. 10% of growth in your own experience. In this book, Thanks for the Feedback, it says we should be able to listen to the harshest criticism and be able to assess, not necessarily accept everything, not necessarily ignore everything, but to assess what truth there is to the statement that was made and to see how it could impact us. Now, there's a second type of individual. There's the rubber band individual, and then there's the glue individual. Now, this particular passage is talking about the rubber band individual, the one that won't accept the truth whatsoever. Now, there's another type of individual, and this is just a caveat to today's sermon because we have to understand the two types of frameworks that we can get into. And the second one is the glue individual, where every criticism sticks to them, whether it's true or not, where they accept everything to the fullest degree, and they think that every sort of criticism is something that they should embrace, and they just beat themselves up over every comment that is made. We're not supposed to be the rubber bands or the glue. We're supposed to be something in the middle, accepting truth when it comes and rejecting falsities when they come. I like the way G.K. Chesterton puts it. He says, "A mind should be open, but not so open that your brain falls out. A mind should be like a mouth that closes in on something that's sustaining and good, not like a sewer that retains everything and takes all the junk along with it." So in this context here, we have the unrighteous individual just rejecting everything. And in this context, they are literally suppressing truth. And God gets upset about this suppression of truth. I think that one of the unknown factors of righteousness is the ability to be able to comprehend and understand and accept truth. And here we have this community doing the complete opposite. So in this context of sin, it's important to understand, and we've talked about this several times, but I found this awesome quote here in the New International Dictionary of the New Testament Theology. It says that sin is regarded as a phenomenon of theological and social importance, as something that destroys the community. So sin isn't just an individual suppression of truth. It isn't just an individual either being a rubber band. It's literally a destruction to the community that they're in. Sin is something that destroys communities in ways that we can't even imagine. And it's important to be able to understand the way that individuals' character actually impacts other individuals. Now, I think that ultimately what we could do, the best thing we could do, is to see and assess how well we are at accepting, receiving, and translating truth into our own lives. I think that if we become vessels to be a better community makers, then as we become these type of vessels, we literally heal the community from the brokenness that they're in. So in this context, this concept of unrighteousness, within the theological definition of this righteousness, this is what this theological dictionary said, is that sin, in its very essence, what it does is it impacts and hurts communities. It destroys us. Let's keep on going, and this is where we're going to find the answer to that question. We needed to set up that backdrop that sin suppresses truth, but what is the truth that they're suppressing? What is it that they're specifically denying according to Paul in this passage in Romans? In Romans 1:21 it says, "For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and in their foolish hearts they were darkened." Now, I want you to understand a little bit of what's going on here. He's saying that not honoring God or giving thanks to them darken their minds. Now, this concept of futile, this darkening of their hearts, and this concept of futility is defined as the way it mentions in this following dictionaries. This is a New Testament dictionary of New Testament theology and exegesis. It says, disregards and transgresses them, falls under the judgment of being Matthios, that person's life becomes a deceptive appearance. So in this concept here, the denying of giving thanks to God, the denying of honoring God, essentially makes us a husk of Christianity, where we literally aren't living our best spiritual lives. This whole concept of not understanding, not being in this context of thanksgiving of God, literally destroys our spirituality. And this is one thing that I would have never thought. I would have thought, oh, well, yeah, well, open sin will bring you to destroy your spirituality. Adultery will bring you to destroy your spirituality. Or maybe greed will make you destroy your spirituality. But this whole concept of giving thanks is so important, because what it does is it strikes at the heart of the most deep-rooted disease of sin, which is pride. Because whenever you could give thanks to God, you literally are saying that God is someone worth giving thanks to, and that you receive someone as a beneficiary from him. Giving thanks to God is what is known as a pride killer. Now, I want you to imagine this. If you are truly connected to God, this whole concept, I think that one of the saddest things is this whole connection of racism and Christianity. And Christianity has this dark past of how many individuals have fallen into the pits of racism while still walking around holding their Bibles and singing hymns. It is one of the darkest spots within our faith. But whenever you ask individuals that stood at the very forefront, that were facing this, those that were getting the complete wrath of racism, like Martin Luther King Jr., he was asked the question, so why do you hold to Christianity? All these individuals that are racist against you are Christians. Doesn't that make you think that Christianity doesn't work? And in his response, he says the most eloquent, beautiful thing that you could imagine someone that is completely sold out on the gospel would say. He says, no, the problem is not the fact that they need less Christianity. They need more Christianity. They just have enough so it could connect it within their own cultural forms. Now, it's interesting. When Martin Luther King Jr. was saying this, he's essentially communicating that there is a type of Christianity that you could get into where you could literally say you're a Christian and become a husk of yourself and suppress the truth. So the contradictory statement of a racist Christian could be a reality in your life if you're not honoring and thanking God, because you'll come into futile thinking. And in this context, Martin Luther King Jr. said the powerful statement that it's not the fact that we need less Christianity, it's the fact that we need more. I want you to imagine how racism would play if they really thought about the context of the fact that they were worshiping a Middle Eastern man that didn't speak English. The fact that he lived in a country that wasn't like theirs, the fact that he was the poor of the poor, if they understood the details of this context of Christianity, this God that they worship, it was because of the fact that they had disconnected from Christianity and connected to the cultural aspect of Christianity, that they were able to pull out their racist, crazy ideas that they did. So, in this context here, not thanking God and not honoring him is essentially what leads you to the ultimate downfall of spirituality. Because not thanking him makes you think that what you accomplished is really something that you accomplish on your own. You may think that you had the ability to go to work because you put your 2 feet into the boots to be able to go out in that construction job. Or maybe you worked in medicine and you have that mind that got you through medical school. Well, who put that mind in your head? Who put those shoes? Who put those feet so you could put on shoes? It's important to understand the context that this whole connection of being grateful and thankful for the things that God has given us always leads us to think that we are the objects of God's love. But if we're the objects of God's love, then we know that what we receive is totally based on God's goodness and not based on our whole concept of eliteness. This whole concept of eliteness, that we are better than the community around us, because we know that the same goodness that's offered to us is offered to them. But this only happens when you kneel down and you thank your Creator when you make this a daily habit, when you make sure that God is someone that is worthy to be praised, and you make this part of your intricate spirituality, thanking God is a cure to a lot of the woes of spirituality. Honestly it's a cure to a lot of the woes within our own society. We're going to go to the next slide. It says here, we read that one already. So, if you take anything away from today's message, I want you to understand this. And this is super important. This isn't just like a little bit important. This is going to be one of the apex of spirituality. This is going to be one of those things like that if you don't check off your box whenever you're looking at your own spiritual walk, then you're in danger of living a husk of the Christian life that you should be living. Being thankful is the elixir to being gullible to sin. Being thankful is the elixir to being gullible to sin. So, if you're thankful to God, then you know that it's God's goodness that establishes your reality, not your own eliteness. If it's God's goodness that establishes your own reality, then it's important to understand that this goodness is also offered to those around you. This whole concept of God's goodness essentially should be a cure to the gullibility of sin. This whole idea, and honestly, I keep going over racism because it's a relevant thing that's happening within our community. It's a relevant thing that's happening within the discussion within our community, and racism is the greatest amount of hate for the least amount of reason. I think that if you've ever experienced any hint of racism, you know how much it hurts and burns. I recently posted something on Facebook. I really wanted some tamales when I was living in Birmingham and I was working as a pastor up there. And my mom decided to send me some in the mail, and she's like, well, you just got to hurry up and put them in the fridge as soon as they get there in order for them to be okay. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds great, Mom. Thank you so much. So she sent tamales, and when they showed up, they were spoiled. And when I was looking, I opened up the box, it smelled, I was like, oh man, I'm so bummed. I really wanted these tamales. And I threw the box away, and I told my mom, I was like, Mom, thank you so much, but they showed up spoiled, and I threw the box away. She's like, wait, you threw the whole box away? I was like, yeah, Mom, it smelled. Well, I put your yearbooks in the bottom of the box. You didn't see them? I was like, no, Mom, all I saw was the rotten tamales on top. You mean I threw away my only yearbooks that I have from high school? She's like, yeah, and also junior high. And I was like, Mom, why didn't you tell me? Well, I thought you were going to look through the box. And I remember just being super bummed. And I posted online. I was like, hey, I lost my yearbooks. Anyone that's friends with me on Facebook, can you guys tell me how, if there's any way possible for me to get a copy of this yearbook? Is it on some database somewhere? And they started telling me to connect with people that I just, honestly, I feel bad, but high school is like a faint memory, and only those that I really talk to, I truly remember from high school. And a lot of people that I did remember started making fun of me. They're like, haha, you can't remember. I can't believe you can't remember, Zeke. That was such a big part of our lives, blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, but I'll tell you one of the things that I just came back that I did remember. When I was going through these high school memories and I was sitting there trying to think of how I remembered some of these individuals, most of these individuals that I knew that I went to school with for years, that I did remember, are either the individuals that I was really close friends with, the ones that impacted me because they were like my best friends, close friends, people that I talked to. And then there were individuals that I still remember that would make racist remarks at school to me. And I just remember as I was sitting there, I was like, why is it that the greatest memories and the worst memories are the ones that are so deeply ingrained? And I realized that the pain of being different, I was a kid with an accent, my food was different than theirs, I dressed different than them, I was at a different socioeconomical place than a lot of them, and I just remember thinking like, the stuff that they would say, that I smelled like beans. I remember the things that they would communicate, like, oh, look, there's a fly. It must be because he's one of those dirty Mexicans that came over the border. And all the stuff that they would say, I would get so upset. And I remember talking to the teacher, and the teacher would be like, oh, just ignore them. They're being rude. They're being rude. So then I remember like saying stuff to them, and then I remember getting in trouble. And within this context, that pain, it's just something that just got seared into my memory, because I truly thought that I was less than them. They convinced me in a community that I was less than them, that they were better off than me. And in this context, I just realized how much racism impacts and like really affects our lives. It really, really, truly impacts. But in this whole context of Christianity and God, essentially understanding the context in which what they were communicating, what they were saying within the context of who I am, I would have understood now that they were literally disregarding the image of God in me. They weren't rejecting me. They were rejecting the God who created me, whose image I bear. And within this context, they literally were disregarding God. And I think that racism is the ultimate disregard of who God is, because it's a rejection of the image that people bear. And regardless of what skin color you have, we are all bearers of God's image. But being thankful to God, knowing that there's no sense of eliteness, there's no sense of racial superiority, thanking God, knowing that God's goodness is good all the way around, is the ultimate cure to some of these social woes that we have. And I think that being thankful to God's goodness, it's going to be the cure to your individual spiritual woes within your own walk. Being thankful to God is one of the most important aspects. I also wanted to mention to you that sin is the ultimate entitlement mentality. How, you might ask? Well, think about the origin of sin. Satan essentially thought he could be God. He had this ultimate state of entitlement, thinking that he could be on the mountain of God and declare himself to be the Most High. And a lot of times sin, what it is the sense that I am better than the community around me. But this whole concept of thankfulness to God literally challenges that at its very core, because sin and its ultimate entitlement mentality is cured by this humility of thankfulness that we could only get whenever we give to God. There's this other verse that I wanted to read to you guys, because you might be thinking, okay, but what about these times that we're living in? This quote has always been one that I feared and loved at the same time. This passage in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 2 and 9, it says here, coming of the lawless one, this is talking about like the Antichrist figure, is by the activity of Satan with all power and false signs and wonders. So essentially the greatest weapon that this end time diabolical figure will have is lies. That's going to be his ultimate weapon against us. It's going to be his ultimate fight against us, is going to be this ability to be able to make us believe lies. And in verse 10 it says, and with all the wicked deception for those who are perishing, because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. Now, I want you to understand the context in which we would be saved within this text. It's saying that there's going to be so much falsehood that's going to be prevailing and engulfing the earth, that unless you love the truth, then you're going to be given into a lie. Now, this is not saying that you just conceptually understand the truth. This is saying that you literally have a loving relationship with this concept of truth. Because unless you have this loving relationship within this concept of truth, you're going to be caught up with a lie. Because the only salvation from lies is loving the truth. I love this quote by Blaise Pascal here. It says, truth is so obscure in these times, and falsehood so established, that unless we love the truth, we cannot know it. When you are thankful, you do not compare. When you are thankful for your marriage, you do not lust after others. When you are thankful, you do not envy And within these contexts of thankfulness, it's literally the cures to some of the worst aspects in our society, because thankfulness, it is essentially the cure, the elixir to the sin of entitlement. Because when you are thankful, you're not comparing, because you are thankful for what you do have, not for what others have. You're thankful for your own accomplishments, not for what others have accomplished. And when you are thankful for your own marriage, when you're thankful for your own spouse, you're not out looking for another partner. When you are thankful, you do not envy. That causes you to go spend way too much money on things that you cannot afford to impress people you do not even like. It's important to understand that being thankful to God cures us from a lot of the societal norms that would essentially plague us. And in this context of thankfulness, I just want to let you guys know that if you guys are not checking this off within your own spirituality, then you're going to fall into the pit of jumping in and having a futile mind. Let's go back to that verse real quick, because I just want to close off with that one. I'm just going to go back a little bit. There we go. This is the verse that I want to jump into. It says, "For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened." So the very instrument that's going to keep us in loving the truth is our hearts, loving truth, right? Well, that's the very thing that becomes darkened whenever we don't thank God. If we don't thank God, the very instrument that will keep us in truth is going to be the one that's darkened, so that we don't even understand truth. So I want you to do something for me. In the next week, I want you to challenge yourself and write 3 meaningful things each day for the next 7 days that you're genuinely thankful for God. Like, I'm not talking about the cheesy things, like you'd be like, yeah, I thank God when I eat my food, and maybe you are really thankful, and then you could really elaborate on that, and that's great. But just make sure that there's depth to your thankfulness, not just the parakeet of thankfulness. Make sure that thankfulness comes from your heart and not just a duty that you have to do. So I want you to either have a journal, have some way of documenting. A lot of people started using, actually don't have it here, but a little audio recorder where you start having like a own spiritual journey audio diary. And maybe you could do it there, where you could talk about 3 things that you're thankful. If you don't have time to write things down and you're on the road and you just need to record, you could do it on your phone. You could create a memo. But for the next 7 days, get on this journey of thankfulness. We're about to be at Thanksgiving, where a lot of times it's become more about food than it has about the spirit of Thanksgiving. Well, I challenge you guys to make sure that you create this journal, this culture of Thanksgiving, and that you dive into it within your own hearts. Not because it's just something that's kind of important, but because it's of ultimate importance. Because if not, you will be given into the end time lie. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. I wanted to thank you for joining us, regardless of the fact that we couldn't be in person. But we really appreciate you guys as a community, and we love you guys. And I hope that you guys are able to join into this challenge where you essentially connect to thankfulness within your own spiritual lives. I hope that these 7 days of thanking God become a lifetime of thanking him. And I hope that you learn and acquire the habits that you have to have a vibrant and beautiful spirituality. God bless, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.